everyone, happy Valentine's Day, and welcome to another episode of Hot Tea and Tall Tales. This week, we're going to be doing a special romantic episode with a romantic tea and a romantic book. Before we get into the review, I just want to remind everyone that reviews are, by their very nature, subjective, even when the reviewer does their best to remain objective about certain aspects. So, you might not always agree with what I have to say about a book, and I might not always agree with what you think about a book. So even when my reviews aren't as positive as some of us, well, even me, would hope, just bear that in mind as you watch the review. Okay, so today's tea is a little bit of a first impression. I'm very familiar with the brand, which is Numi. They make one of my favorite teas, which is their jasmine green tea. And today, we are going to try out their white rose, which is a white tea with fragrant rose buds. It is considered lower caffeine. I'm not quite sure what their measurement is for caffeine, but the jasmine tea, green tea, is a medium caffeine on their scale. So if that gives you any frame of reference. This is a 2 to 3 minute steep. I split the difference and steeped for 2.5 minutes. And it is fair trade certified and organic. So if you're into that, this is a good tea for you. You can buy it on its own, but I actually got it as part of the Numi's collection, which also has a green tea, a black tea, an herbal tea, and some other things in it. So, I got this at Walmart. I will have shopping links below, including Numi's website. And so, let's give it a taste. Oh, this is good. So it's got a very light floral flavor, and if you like floral teas, you've got to try this. I've got just one packet of stevia sweetener, which is typically how I take my tea, and this is good, guys. You've just got to try this. This week's book is from independent author Rose Withering. That is a pen name. Full disclosure, we are members of the same writing group. Yes, I will eventually be reviewing books from people not in my writers group. My backlog just happens to include a lot. Rose is actually the municipal liaison for our National Novel Writing Month group. Her husband Dan is a science fiction writer, and he's also in the group. And they live in Northeast Ohio with their 2 cats, Athos and Achilles. Even though Rose is my friend, that does not influence my opinions on the book, even when I wish that it did. So, let's get into the book. So about the book. This week's book is Soulmates, An Unforgettable Summer, and it is available from Amazon on Kindle. It is 99 cents, which is what I paid for it. It is also available in paperback, but I don't have a paperback copy to share with you today. The book comes in at 241 pages approximately, according to Amazon Kindle. The genre is romance with a little bit of a Western flavor. Okay, so as those of you who have been watching for a few episodes now know, our first category rating section is design, which is what's the book look like and how is it laid out. So first, the exterior. I like the cover of Soulmates. The slanty lettering in the sans serif font's a little weird, but the cover's what I would expect from a sweet romance, which is what this is. And there's good color. It's maybe a little washed out, but overall, it's not a bad design. If I was going to give this a rating based solely on the cover, I would give it a rating of 3 teaspoons. unfortunately, this section is exterior and interior, which brings me to my next point. This book has some formatting problems. And I let the author know about it because, I mean, if you don't flip through the whole book after you publish it, you're not going to notice these sorts of things. I think it was probably a problem with the upload, but it's really distracting. There are random gaps. There are lines that get return characters prematurely and they end funny. Then there's places where the dialogue is all scrunched up like it's one paragraph, but it's like 3 different people talking, and you can't follow who's saying what. So one of the headings lost its styling. There's some serious formatting problems. Fortunately, that's something that's easy to fix, and hopefully, maybe even by the time this review is live, Rose will have gotten a chance to address the formatting problems. But because of the formatting issues, that actually made the book difficult for me to read. It was very distracting. I have to give the book 2 teaspoons for design. Okay, our next section is premise, which is what's the book about? What is the foundation, the fundamental idea that this story is built on? And as I have in previous weeks, I am first going to start by reading you the book blurb or description. Here we go. Suspenseful romance with a Western theme. An unbelievable story about a boy and a girl who meet one unforgettable summer. That's it. That's the whole blurb. The blurb, unfortunately, is a little bit more of an elevator pitch than an actual book blurb. It doesn't really give you much to go on for what is the story about. So I'm going to do my best to give you a summary of the premise based upon my reading of the book. And the premise is that young Eddie works on a ranch with his family who've worked there for 3 generations, and they don't own it, they just work there. And he comes to have a part in rescuing the long-lost granddaughter of the ranch's owner from her abusive uncle who tries to kill her. And they fall in love, and there's some more to it than that. But that's the premise that the story starts out with. First let me say that this is normally a genre that I really enjoy. I like Western romances. I own quite a few. Some books by Joanna Lindsay and Diana Palmer come immediately to mind. I think maybe a few Debbie McLemore's are also Western romances. So when it comes to the big popular romance authors, this is something that I read. So I have no genre bias here at all. So it's not a bad premise. My issue, I have a couple of issues. One, it's not well articulated in the book, on the back of the book, in the book blurb. And 2, it's not easy to decipher early where the story is going. That was something that I struggled with the book in general. So, while I think there's some great potential in this story, in this premise anyway, I can only give it about 3 teaspoons, and we'll get into execution in the following sections. Okay, so our next section is characters. Of course, being a romance, we have to have a romantic hero and a romantic heroine. Our romantic hero is Edward Goldman, aka Eddie. He is a teenager throughout the book. And my problem with Eddie is that he seems like he's 12 to me, basically, even at the point where he's actually an adult. He's just not believable to me as a romantic hero. Even from a YA perspective. He just falls in love with Nicole immediately and is immediately devoted to her, and it just doesn't make any sense. He doesn't have a strong character arc, other than he goes a little emo while he thinks she's dead. That's it. Nicole has a couple of, like, kind of badass moments that are kind of cool, but for the most part, she's also pretty flat, doesn't seem to have a lot of growth, and she makes some weird decisions that she makes herself miserable for no apparent reason in a couple of places, and that's just strange to me. And then there's Judd, the villain, who, I guess he's bad because his father was bad, and that was the example he was raised with, but I feel like Judd could have benefited from a little more, a little deeper digging, a little more development as a character. We need to understand the motives of our villain. And then there's the rest of the cast, and this book has a wide cast, at least in my opinion, for a romance novel. And I'm not talking about, like, walk-on, walk-off characters. Like, Eddie's whole family is in this book. Like, his whole extended family. He's got a bunch of uncles, cousins, aunts, whatever. And I feel like a lot of them really could have just been boiled down to one character. Like, I don't know why Uncle Eric and Uncle Buck both need to be a thing. Like, one uncle could have done the work of either. I feel like Billy, his cousin, is in there just to give him a chance for exposition. And he's just kind of pointless to me. I feel like Anne's sons could have been... She has 5. 5. I don't know why. Like, the 2 that are on her side could have been one character, and the 2 that are on their brother's side could have been one character. And that would have greatly simplified the cast. There's just, in my opinion, too many names to keep track of for the scope of the story. This isn't some broad, sweeping epic like Game of Thrones where you can have, you know, the entire state of New York for your cast. So, I give characters 2 teaspoons. Not enough development, too many rash decisions, and just too many characters that don't serve a purpose, in my opinion. And the next section is world building. Now, in a book that presumably takes place in the real world, the job of world building is to ground the reader in a particular place and time. And this book struggled with that for me. First, because of the formatting issues, the heading with the date actually got lost on the page with the acknowledgments, so I didn't see it when I initially started reading the book, and I had no idea when this book was taking place. I assumed it was after Henry Ford popularized the assembly line, because there were a lot of cars and trucks, but it wasn't until much later in the book that I actually figured out that I was dealing with between the year 1996 and the year 1998. There were no other real good clues in context, so that was a little bit of a problem. And then there were other things that just kind of broke the flow of reality for me. The story is set in the town of Duncan. If it was ever said what state Duncan was in, I missed it. I don't know what state the story takes place in, presumably somewhere out west because there is a ranch. And Duncan seems to have the loosest castle laws that I've ever heard of. And for those of you who don't know, castle laws are laws in various states in the U.S. that say if somebody breaks into your home and intends to do you harm, you can shoot them. And that's actually legal in a lot of states. So where Duncan is kind of important, but even so, the way that the story refers to shooting trespassers just doesn't seem realistic to me. I think the story could have benefited from a little more research into the legal code for wherever the story is set. That was a little bit of a reality breaker for me. And the handling of firearms in general in the story was a little bit of a flaw. I guess if you're not familiar with guns, you wouldn't have noticed things, but like that. But when Eddie said he had deadly aim with a shotgun, I kind of chuckled, because you don't really need to aim a shotgun. You just kind of point it in the right direction, and the shot scatters, and you're probably going to hit something. Also, shotguns take shells, not bullets. It was just little things like that I'm like... So a little bit of research, I think, would have gone a long way into helping the world building in this book. the number of misfires when Judd tries to shoot Eddie, things like that that point to a poor understanding of firearms. So overall, world building really would have benefited. I'm sounding like a broken record now, but it really would have benefited from more research because it broke immersion. The little details are what helps keep immersion alive for the reader. So, unfortunately, I have to give world building 1 teaspoon. Okay, so plot. I did not like the plot of the book. I'm just going to be upfront with that. I felt like there were a lot of jumps in logic. Characters made illogical decisions. The story did not flow in a natural fashion for me. Some of it was just too contrived, didn't seem real for the time period. It's not a bad idea. I just struggled to suspend my disbelief and be along for the ride with the plot. Like when Judd tries to shoot Eddie, the number of misfires is just crazy to me. Eddie's recovery time just doesn't seem realistic. The romance didn't build. And to me, the best romances have a plot outside of the romance, and the romance is this organic, natural outcome of the overarching plot. And that was not the case here. There were a lot of plot problems. And I have to give the book 1 teaspoon for plot. So our final section is writing, which is voice style, those sorts of things. This book had some high points and some low points. There was some great use of imagery throughout the story. There was also some miscues, I think. The use of first person from Eddie's perspective in the beginning half of the book and then switching to third person, that can be a technique that works if done well and done right. I personally think that it was more of a hindrance in this instance because of Eddie's maturity level. I don't think it helped with making this feel like a romance for the reader. The framing technique that was used with the prologue, I also think was a miscue. I feel like the book would have benefited more from a prologue that either from a non-existent prologue or a prologue that gave a little more exposition into what the setting was, because I spent the first 8 chapters of the book trying to figure out who these people were and where they were and why they were there. So I think that was a miscue stylistically. The writing wasn't great, and it definitely wasn't the worst that I've ever read. I think that it could have just stood to have a little more polish and maybe a few different framing techniques. So for those reasons, I'm going to give the writing 2 teaspoons. Okay, so the overall score for the book, unfortunately, is only 2 teaspoons. I really hate the fact that I didn't like this book, because you always want to support your friends and like the work that your friends are doing, and it really hurts to say that I can't recommend the book because I really wanted to. I wanted this video to be a really happy, romancy video for Valentine's Day, and I was so excited to read this romance novel, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna love it. It's a Western. I love Western romances. And I didn't, and that was very disappointing. And I hope that rather than seeming like I'm being nasty or catty or anything like that, I hope that this will be seen as a critique that is meant to be helpful, not only to readers who are looking for something to read, but also to the author who has potential and has so much room to grow and to blossom. And I hope that that is what will happen, and that the next time I pick up one of her romances, because there will be a next time, that I will get to say, yes, this is great. Everybody should go out and read this. That's what I hope will happen next time. So that's it for this week's episode of Hot Tea and Tall Tales. If you like this video, please be sure to hit that like button. If you want to join us again next week for another tea and book review, hit that subscribe button and the little bell so that you will be notified as soon as it is up. And if there's a book you would like me to review, or you think I should just read because I would enjoy it, I want to know. So let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you guys. So that's it. Hope to see you next weekend, and enjoy your week. Ciao!